I made it my priority. And I simply invited 5 women at random, just maybe the first 5 that I met, to dinner. And during the dinner, I was trying to just figure out, like, how much can I talk about that's great? How much can I complain? Like, where are the boundaries here on these relationships as I just start to explore this? And during the dinner, I wanted them to meet with me again. And I asked if I did, I mean, my background's marketing. So I was like, hey, what if we call this the Ladies Dinner Club and we just do this again next month? I just named it, right? It was completely out of nowhere. And we met monthly. And I said, let's keep it small, because the reality was, for me, it was almost like a science experiment, right? And I needed all the variables to stay the same. Like, I needed them to be the same so that I could learn every time. And yet my nature was to invite and invite and invite, because I was learning so much. And so I just started inviting other people. And then the next thing you know, I mean, overnight, it was, 25 people, then 100 people, 200 people, 700 people. We ended up with thousands and thousands of people. And DC, so transient. So as people would move, they would want to have the same experience in their new city, because it had created such a safe haven, such a trusted group of women, that even if you didn't know them, to send a question out to the group and to get responses, it was trusted. And it was it is so supportive. But that was really the heyday, right? When we had all these cities, and we had technically we had 11, but on paper we had 9 cities, major cities across the country. We had annual women's conference, Women Leading the Future. And we did that for 5 years. We had amazing partners like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and USO. We focused on female veterans, and another year women in technology, which was interesting because my background's not technology, and just because I promoted women in technology, I got nominated for technology awards, and I was offended. I'm like, I am not doing technology. Like, this shouldn't come to me. This should be the women in technology, and we should be driving more women in technology, in politics and such. But eventually I just started seeing how naturally it was growing, and it was inexplicable. I mean, there's some things that just happen in life that there is no explanation for it, right? It was just that fast and that large. It was growing. And I started just seeing that we had, and I read that there's a GEM report that the State Department puts out, and they had developing countries. There was like a list of 10 things in their research that they were like the hindrances, the most significant hindrances for successful entrepreneurship in developing countries. And on that list it was either number 3 or number 4 was a network. And I just thought, in DC, you can literally like walk down the street 1 block and build a network. I mean, it's that easy, right? In America, it's pretty easy to build a network. And I just hadn't given it that credence, like that concept. Like, in other countries, they're not sitting on the same opportunities that we are. So the idea was, how do we, oh, my cat's joining us. The idea is that we have this circle, and we just open up the circle and like wrap you in and bring you in and allow you to utilize this network. And so it really, was ultimately, I saw it all lied on mentorship and technology, right? Like, with mentorship and technology, there's no stopping us, right? And so that's what we did. And we've done a couple of international projects. So it's really just moved more international. But simultaneously, the message that I continue to share with the women involved in our organization is that we do focus on international, and it's very easy to do international. And it would have been very easy for me to just jump there in the beginning. But there was something like very sexy about that in DC. Like, if you said, like, I'm working with women in Africa, then it was suddenly you were doing something relevant. But if you were supporting your neighbor, it wasn't, right? And that's not okay either. So the point was, I'm not minimizing the stresses that we deal with, the issues that we face. Yes, they are first world problems, but they are still challenges, and it's okay to address those and build a stronger, united group of women, healthier, more educated, right, more connected, and then the impact that you can have internationally is so much stronger. I like in India alone, they have like close to 500,000 nonprofits. They're all trying to do the same thing. Like, why aren't you getting together? Why are you all competing for the same funds and trying to reach people? Like, what could we do if we're connected? And so we really became a clearinghouse for other women's organizations. And I started off, as it grew, my initial thing, this is the training that you have from the world, was, oh, that organization, we're going to bury that organization. I remember saying that in my first actual board meeting because it was a direct competition. And I called an emergency meeting with my board back, and I was like, I am so embarrassed. This goes against everything that we think. And it wasn't even how I truly felt. I just thought I had to say that. I thought I had to be super uber competitive to show the value of our organization. And then I was like, that's the only time we will ever hear that in this organization. It's not happening anymore. So we just looked for other organizations to lift up and to support and to amplify, right? Just let's use our megaphone and say, talk about all the amazing things that they're doing, and connect people. I mean, that was it. It was so natural for me, and I didn't realize it wasn't that natural for others. And so I'm like, great, here, take all of it, take all of the people, like utilize this as much as you possibly can, and don't like don't hold back, because this is built for you, for women, and the impact is amazing. I mean, it really is. And some of the things might seem small, jobs that people got through the organization, housing that they found, just best friends. But I mean, I've watched it through almost 15 years, and they're still supporting each other, right? It still happens. And one thing that I saw immediately was it's self-regulated. We don't have to decide. We don't have like there's not an application, you can or you can't be here. If you want to be in a network of women supporting other women, then you're welcome. Come here. That I'll mention just one other thing with the work in Zambia. I was very surprised, actually. I wasn't really sure what I was going to be doing with the summit. I was asked at the very last minute. I did not know it was going to be 2 days. I thought it was going to be an hour at a table with women business owners, and they were going to pepper me with questions. Then I found out the night before it was 2 days, and it was, I think there were 5 hours each day. And I didn't have anything planned, but I immediately got this download of how it was going to work and how we were going to help support the women. And it ended up being a model that we are able to scale. We've shared it with other groups, and they've been able to repeat it. It's a repeatable model. But one of the things that I learned very quickly was they didn't understand partnership, which was so crazy to me because they are a very communal country, right? They help each other with everything. But when we went to the market, we were supporting an orphanage, and we would go to the market to get coal to cook dinner that night. And they asked us to buy from each of these 5 coal vendors, right? So that it was equally dispersed. And I just thought, why don't they get together and build a building and have a coal business, right? And then everything doesn't rely on one person. So as I start talking to them about it through the 2 days, it was just mind blowing. That ended up being the primary conversation over 2 days, and that wasn't the original plan. And the woman that was translating for me, she runs 30 churches in the community. She has a PhD. Her English was immaculate. She came up to me. She's like, I never heard about this partnership. I mean, it was like a foreign word. It was so surprising to me. And then I started to realize we partner all the time. We try to leverage each other's strengths a lot. And there, I think maybe they don't want to interfere with one another's lives or something along those lines. But I remember speaking to this one woman. She had a fish business, and I said, "Well, what happened to it?" She said, my son got sick, and so it just ended." And so I was like, "Well, if you can find somebody else who sells fish, right, then not everything lands on your shoulders. Because it's not a business if it stops completely, right? You got to keep it going, and you have to find partners." And so that's what we ended up doing. We created these teams of 10, and they had to support one another, writing business plans. And some of them were terrible and some of them were great. But the ones that were great, it was incumbent upon them to help the others improve. And it was extraordinary what happened in the course of that time, and how it's continuing to grow. So
awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Teresa, what do you think, and what would you say is the most significant barrier to female leadership?
Great question. I mean, so it's across the board on different, depends on what industry you're in, you know, if it's more male dominated, if it's more of a public facing company. I think in these days and times, they recognize how sensitive the conversation is. So they really seek to find those women that they can uplift. I think the challenge is twofold, and that is making sure that you just respect each person as they are, whether it's male or female, and then those who want to look for a female just to look for a female. It could be just as detrimental to choose the wrong person for the seat, just to say that you have a female, versus really just looking at each person individually and selecting them for what the talent that they bring. And so, you know, it's that challenge that I think some face. But the other side of it is at the end of the day, you know, what conversation are we having about each other? Why can't we just say, "Hi, I'm Teresa. This is my background. These are my qualifications. It doesn't matter if I sit down to go to the bathroom or stand up to go to the bathroom. I am who I am, and this is what I bring," versus trying to, you know, discern between the two of, can this be our token, or are we going to fit our quota, or I'm going to bring this person on, but I'm not really going to respect who they are. You know, at the end of the day, we both need to have masculine and feminine. It's funny, I took, you know, those little Facebook tests that you can take, like they tell you your personality. Every single time I take one, it always tells me that I'm like 50% masculine and 50% feminine, which I find fascinating. So, and that's who I am, but I don't think I would be that person if it wasn't for my life experiences. You know, I could have grown up in pink tutus and never gone into law enforcement, and I would probably be 99% feminine, but my life choices and my exposure, my experience has led me to have more of a balanced view in the world, and that serves me well. And like I had mentioned earlier, I do have some mentees that are women, and they struggle. You know, they struggle with how they communicate. They struggle with trying so hard that sometimes they handicap themselves, instead of just recognizing this is what your strength is and this is what you need to focus to build on. So it's communication. But at the end of the day, I think it's just, you know, let's quit talking about, you know, tags and gender. And although it's important, I don't want to take away from that whatsoever. I don't want to take from the fact that gender is important, but that you look at the person as a whole versus trying to just fill a status quo and trying to become that first one. Although it is celebratory, you know, information, first female fighter pilot, first female president, first female vice president, right? Those things, we should celebrate it, and it's absolutely wonderful, but it should be not the exception, it should be the norm, that we all need to continue to support each other.
But it's not the norm, is it? Right?
No,
so we do take, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment. So we do have these moments that, for example, first chair of the chamber, female, right? Or first Latina of whatever it is, first African-American, da, da, da. So you do have these instances where it is the first,
Mhm.
and it should
And
be
we need to
celebrated
celebrate.
because
Absolutely.
we're taking steps, we're taking strides, you know, in areas that we have not or have not allowed us to venture into, you know, for whatever the reason is. So it's nice to have that celebration, and it's also
Right.
nice to have that group of women who understand where you're coming from and what you've gone through, because can we say that a man understands our journey?
Nope.
Right?
Absolutely not. But it's really funny. You're absolutely right. And I'm glad that I finished up on that. We should celebrate it. But it's almost like I remember the stock market, like, making the Dow making 10,000, like making 10,000, making 10, and then all of a sudden it made 10,000. And then we just broke the barrier on the numbers, right? So same with the women. Let's get there, let's celebrate it, but then let it not be such an isolated number. Let it continue to grow upon it. So you're absolutely right. I agree with you 1,000%.
It's, you know, I always think of, which is going to sound insane, I'm sure, but Star Trek, and you know how it looks out into the future. But everybody, you know, if you look at the world, there's all different creatures, all different people working together, you know, walking the earth as one, or whatever planet as one. There isn't that, unless you're a Klingon, but there isn't that other, you know, like they're fighting. There's harmony. There's harmony. We have accepted people for who we are. It doesn't matter gender, race, culture, color. It's that lens is not on. What's on is just who we are, doing our business, going about, you know, what we have to do.
Mhm.
And I know, Josette, you had a comment you wanted to make about men in the webinar.
Yeah, so I just wanted to acknowledge that I think for the first time, we have a few men that have joined us on this, and I'm really happy that they're here. And I invite them to ask questions if they have anything, and then maybe the two of you have a little bit of advice for them. I know our topic is women communicating with women, but some of the men on the line might want to have an understanding of.
It's a balance. It's about supporting each other. But, we talked about the international side. I was a speaker at a conference in Tokyo, Japan, a couple of years ago. And I just found it fascinating that women were not allowed to own their own business in Japan. I was like, we were celebrating these women in Tokyo with what they've able to accomplish in business. But at the end of the day, they didn't own that business. It was only because the men had allowed them to become a part of the business were they able to celebrate it. So, locally here in the United States, I feel, again, we're very, very fortunate. I've traveled this world in many, many countries, and I have many, many sisters in different countries that are going through a lot of challenges. And we are very fortunate in the US. But at the end of the day, men who support women and understand it, my hat's off to them. Thank you so much, because there are many men that have mentored me leadership wise that has made me strong, has made me a stronger woman, and has made me a stronger leader because of that. So, and it really does take, we can't have just men at the table. We can't have just women at the table. We have to have the conversation on both sides. And it's not just men and women, it's also all races and cultures and different beliefs. So at the end of the day, we really want to be that melting pot. That's the only way we're going to come together as one.
Yeah, it takes all of us.
Yeah.
Lindsey?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I wanted to, something Teresa said reminded me of this. It was the OpEd Project. It is a initiative to help women get published in national papers, which is very interesting because they sort of figured something out that I hadn't thought of before. When women are not writing opinion pieces or getting published, at least, as often as men, and the percentage, I think it was like 13%. It was the same as the percentage of women in political leadership. I mean, they were like side by side. And so I do think that there's a lot to be said about that. And anyway, they do this training, and in it, they have everyone go through and say, hi, my name is blank. I am an expert at blank because of blank, right? And there were maybe 15 women in this training, and that took 2 hours. It was very challenging for women to say, I'm an expert at anything with confidence, right? And I think that is something that would be worth taking time and doing with a confidant, and just going through that exercise and really challenging yourself to say that you are an expert at something. And you are, because nobody else has your history and your background that got you to exactly where you are. And you can identify something that you are an expert at in that whole process. And it's something that is of value to other people, because they very well may experience it as well. And so that exercise, I still remember this woman could not get through it, and they were about to give up on her. And then she just exploded with, I don't know, I've got 2 PhDs in women developing. And she went through this whole lineage of things. She was so outstanding. Like, my head blew up, and we were all like, is she kidding? Like, she's an expert at like 50 things, not just one thing. But it was such an enormous struggle for her to share with us that she was an expert at something. And so that was very eye-opening for me as well. And I want to encourage women to write opinion pieces and get them published. So that's another thing. For men, yeah, I definitely have found great mentorship from men. And I didn't feel like they were mentoring me because I was a woman. I definitely felt like they saw a certain skill set in me. They wanted to see me succeed. And I have also had that from women. So I would encourage men to reach out to women of all ages. I still remember my father and his position at Lockheed Martin, and he would talk about this young college girl that was there, and she's like a bunny. She just like bounces around, and she's all these wild ideas. He thought they were just so crazy, you know. But I think rather than looking at younger generation as like, oh, what are they doing? And they don't really know what they're talking about, but actually taking time to listen, you know, just to reach out across all generations, and just listening, really, right? And helping and supporting.
Thank you.
And I just want to add just one thing. It's really funny because I'm listening and I'm like going back into my Rolodex of memories. And if I had to say anything, is that you're going to face challenges. Sometimes it may not be just because you're a woman. It may just be the person that you're talking to. They may treat the man the same way. Don't let it defeat you. Let it challenge you. Let it challenge you to identify how you can continue to push forward and push back past that barrier. Because if you can get the person that doubts you to believe in you, then you know that you've hit the right mark and you have the right message. And so I don't know why I just felt compelled to say that.
That's a great message.
There's something else that's been brought up in the chat. There is another conversation about women of color engaging, working together as equals with white women. Hopefully we can give this some thought. And I'm glad that this was brought up.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, one of the things in the organization and working with them is that we've come together with a sisterhood, and we're able to listen and understand that women and women of color face a completely different approach, response, and barriers that Caucasian women have not. So you have the added level of color. And so it's very challenging. And this year, the NABO, National Association of Women Business Owners, we do have, you know, a few women of color that are on our board and on our, you know, President's Assembly. And just being able to stop and listen to them, it's been a little bit eye-opening. And to be honest with you, having the conversation in 2020 is, you know, probably 10 to 15 years, 20, 30 years way too late. But I'm glad that we're having the conversation now, because there is a different level of competition, different level of challenges, a different level of barriers that they have to overcome. And it's all about education and having the right conversation that I feel will continue to propel us to move forward and fight for our sisters and our sisters of color.
Thank you for saying that. Lindsey, did you want to add anything to that?
Just that my strongest female mentors just happen to be women of color. Like, they're incredible, they're incredibly successful, and they're a massive part of our organization. But also 3 years ago, it was placed on my heart, completely unexpected, to begin to foster children, which was not in my plan at all. Like, I wasn't on my radar. But I did, and I learned a lot through that process. And I now have a now 4-year-old little boy who is the light of my life, which is why I don't do as much with Ladies America as I did, because he is my number one priority. But in that process, I have seen and worked with his biological mother to every degree that I could, and realized almost immediately that throughout all of the years of work and support that I have been doing with women of all races, there is a whole other segment of women that would never even think to look at our organization at all, right? And they are struggling big time. And I now, as a single parent who's trying to manage school and work and everything else, I'm constantly thinking, how are some of these moms who are single parents with multiple children? I don't know how they do it. I just don't. And it has just opened my eyes to a whole other world of women that we really do need to reach and support and lift. And I'm in the group. Like, I need it too. I mean, it's hard, really hard. But I think that there's something very powerful there, and it's not for lack of want. It's for lack of maybe that hand up, the hand reaching down. And when I first started fostering, everybody I knew was like, oh, this is amazing. And I wasn't doing it for praise, but they were coming around. Everyone was helping. I always had sitters. And then once it became reality, no one's around. Like, nobody's available. It's not the same as it was. And that really hit hard. I was like, wow, this is hard to balance all of this on your own. And I'm not the only one. And I only have one child. So it's I think that is a very, very critically important group. White, Black, Hispanic. It is a really, really challenged group. And I think that we have a lot of work we could probably still do there.
Thank you, Lindsey. So just gonna update us, it's 4:43. We've got a couple more questions. So we will end at 5, and I'm hoping to maybe open it up for some of the attendees to join us live. So one question is, I've been lucky to have both women and men mentors. Do either of you feel that you have benefited from having both men and women as mentors?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of my, initial mentors were men, and it's really funny because at a point in time, I had a male deputy, and I was a patrol sergeant at one point in time. And one of my directors in charge of patrol and operations was speaking to a couple of my deputies, and they had said, no, she's an amazing leader. In fact, I would prefer her to show up as my backup than some of my other zone partners, right? Which is fine. And he said, my director said, wow, that's a really big compliment, especially since she's a woman. And so he meant no harm by that, but it was in his mind, that was the generation that he came up in. So to this day, he's one of my biggest, mentors and fans. He didn't understand what he was saying, but he listened to me when I told him that just shouldn't be. You should just respect me as a leader. And, but I've had many, many men mentors, to include my father. My father was in the Marine Corps, and then he went into law enforcement, and I kind of followed his path. And he taught me how to be tough, and he taught me how to be sensitive at the same time. So a lot of men mentors, absolutely. I haven't had a lot of women leader mentors, but what I have had is women friends and sisters, and women who have inspired me to make me think, I want to be like you. I want to, positioned myself to grow like you have. And I am inspired by you and I respect you. And therefore I want to learn from you, but I haven't had that direct mentorship. But I hope that in turn that I am that one, mentor for other women that work with me.
Thank you. Anything to add, Lindsey?
Yeah, I was just gonna say undoubtedly yes. The benefit from both male and female. One of the women that did mentor me, and she had actually pulled me aside, and it was at a time when everyone was really talking about you need to be get a sponsor, somebody who's sponsoring you. It's more than mentoring you. Like they're gonna like pull you up. They're sponsoring you. And I remember at one of our mentoring lunches, she said that she wanted to sponsor me, and she is like, I was, it felt like Oprah was telling me that she wanted to mentor me. She's that magnificent. And yeah, and I'm not saying anything bad about her, but I wish that had happened, right? It was a very bold move. It was I was so grateful for it. But at the end of the day, it didn't really happen. And so I think that there was a lot to learn there too. It would have been good to tell me to slow down, right? Or we both need to slow down to actually fulfill the commitment that was made. Now, I'm just so grateful. And if I asked her for anything today, she would help me. She would help advise me. It's not that. It was just, I felt sort of a sigh of relief, like, wow, gosh, I have a sponsor, right? Like I have somebody who's really dedicating their life to help me, like my career and the success of our organization and all of that. And it didn't happen, but okay, it's okay. But it is something worth noting. And I think if you're going to make a commitment like that to someone, make sure you do it and figure out if it's not coming to fruition. There's a reason, because it was a desire that we both had, and so let's move that forward. And so anyway, just one of my experiences.
Thank you. One more thing that came up, and so last week, I don't know if you ladies have heard of Imposter Syndrome, but it was our topic last week. So the question in the Q&A is, do you think this is more common amongst women? So I don't know if you can answer that question, because I had not heard of this until last week, and I was a facilitator, and it was a great conversation that came up. But do you have a little bit to add on to that, or I can tackle the question?
It's the famous fake it until you make it. Imposter syndrome is both male and female. But I feel like the female is a little bit more held out because it comes down to that competitiveness of, if I can't be better than you in conversation, let me prove that I'm better than you, that you're an imposter, not me. Men, they don't care. They're all faking it until they make it, and they know that, and they own it, and then they move forward. So for women, they challenge each other a little bit more, just because it's that competitive side of it that I talked about earlier. Sometimes you want to be the only shining star because that is the one that wins the trophy. But no, absolutely. But I feel absolutely that it's on both genders. It's just one is called out more than the other.
Thank you.
Lindsey, did you add anything?
I don't have anything to really add other than I've experienced it. I've definitely experienced it. I remember a year and a half ago, I was asked to keynote a women's chamber event in another state. And at that particular time, I was struggling with a female in our office, and she was way above me. And it felt very hard to go and to present when I felt like I didn't feel 100%, but that is the imposter syndrome, right? I didn't feel like I had all the answers, but we don't have all the answers, right? And so I had to sort of talk myself off that ledge and understand that there was value in what I was being asked to share, and to also share that experience. Again, we're human. This is my piece of advice that I always tell people. If I could tell my younger self this too, it's not that serious. It's, you know, like we make everything so serious. If you miss bath time or you're 5 minutes late to a meeting, I mean, you try your best, but I went to a thing at Yale, and they had this woman like talk to us. It was some women thing at Yale, and she had forgiveness spray. I love it. She's like, I just make a mistake and I just spray myself with forgiveness spray and just let it go. Right. So like, hey, you made a mistake. Just all right, you're done. Like, just let it go.
Okay, I want to ask a couple of questions in regards to, let's tear you apart and find out what's really ticking inside as we start wrapping up. And then I want you to tell us a little bit about your organizations if we wanted to get involved, or how do we find out more, etc. So, Teresa, what do you like about yourself? This is an easy one. What do you like about yourself?
That I'm willing to open myself up to failure, that I'm okay with it, that I know that I can recover.
That's great. I love that answer. That's a great answer. Lindsey? Is she there?
She froze.
She froze.
I mean, it's a very good freeze. If I had to freeze, I would want
It's a
that
good
look
freeze.
on my face.
It is a good
I
freeze.
agree. Yeah, that's a good profile pic for her.
It's a really good
Right?
freeze.
Is it still frozen?
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
there she is.
I cannot tell you the last 6 days with our internet provider.
So the question is, what do you like about yourself?
I didn't realize how much I rely on it. Yes. So what I was going to say is, am I frozen again?
No, you're good.
Am I frozen? Oh, okay. I was like, no. All right. It's that how much I care for other people. And I believe like that is my purpose. No matter what area of my life it is, it's the level of, it's to care for other people. And it carries in everything, literally everything I do. I mean, we have a robust Airbnb business here. I have people coming in and out all the time, and I can see it even there, like how much I want to care for other people, and not in a negative way, in a positive way that it fills me, right? And so that's what I like the most.
Okay, scenario. You walk into a room, a boardroom. It's all men. Where do you sit? There's no chair, like meaning president. Everyone is equal. Where do you sit in the room? So it's a round table. Or an oval. Let's make it oval table. Oval table. Where do you sit?
All right, so I'm going to reveal my background here. I'm going to find the seat that is furthest from the door, that I have my back against the wall and I'm facing the door.
So that all goes back to your law enforcement days, right?
It doesn't matter the chair or the position. It's what is the safest space that I can see where anybody's coming through that door. Sorry, I just had to be honest with that.
No, that's great. Lindsey, where do you sit?
Well, I would instinctively, I would say I would sit at the table, but I can say I have walked into a room where if there isn't an opening and there's not a chair there, I don't typically just go grab one and move it up. I sort of like feel out whatever everyone else, male and female, but I'm not looking at it from the perspective of I'm a woman at the table or not at the table. I'm looking at it like social norms. Is everybody else moving chairs or not? Right? Like, I'm not going to be so it's weird. I mean, I don't want to be weird, right? Like, I've got to sit right here, and that it goes back to some of what we've been talking about, which is it doesn't matter if we're male or female. Like, if there's a chair at the table, you sit at the table, and if there's not, if everyone's moving them, move them. I think you just
Okay.
do whatever.
So final thoughts, because I do want to have that time for both of you to talk about, how we can find out more about these organizations. What is some advice that, we started the conversation with communications, how we communicate with one another, messages that we may send, whether it's body language, facial expressions, it's something that Teresa, to your point, whether it's to males or females, it doesn't matter. It's how we present ourselves, how we're dressed, right? How we look, how we say hello, how we shake a hand. It's all these small things. You know, with that in mind, how do you communicate with other people, or like what is the best advice that you have for women who and the men who are on this on our webinar? What is the best advice you have on how to present yourself in communication?
I think authenticity is probably the biggest, just be who you are, be confident in who you are and be authentic. If you try to pretend, then that's what's going to come across. And then you'll end up letting yourself down, and you'll end up letting the other people around you down. And on the imposter, that's a very natural response, but we all have a little bit of that in us. We all feel that, and it's not true. But if you own who you are and you're authentic and you're real, it's one of the things that when people talk, when I get feedback on me, on meeting me or what they thought about me or their experience, I consistently get the same response. And that is, you're just so real, right? I mean, as if that's not normal, but just be who you are and be confident. Again, back to that, be confident in the fact that you're going to make mistakes, be confident in the fact that you're not always going to be right, be confident in the fact that you can go through life and continue to make everything a lesson, but you're also a servant leader, that you serve others in a good way in order to improve yourself and improve their life and move forward. So, that's all we can do is just leave a little bit of our legacy.
Well said. Lindsey?
Right. And what I would say is, I think as long as you're focusing on the relationship, I don't think I don't believe in coincidences. I think that everyone that we meet, there's a value in it. And so I feel like if we're genuinely being respectful of other people and listening to them and vice versa, that, I don't know, it doesn't matter in what area of our lives, whether it's our businesses, our home life, our friendships, our families, they're like actually paying attention to the value of each of those relationships. It holds a lot of weight. That said, when I first start with new clients, because I do value relationships so much, I can't just jump in and be like, this is my whole personal life, which is what I would naturally want to do. So I do start off, and it's not disingenuous, but it is more formal. I do that to make sure they understand that I am there to work, and that I want to succeed, and I have a competitive nature, and success is very important in the work that we're doing. But over that time, I have found that I just really get to know all the people that I do projects with and I work with and that I serve and that help me and support me. And what else is the point to life if we're not enjoying the people that we're working with? So
nice. So Teresa, do you want to talk a little bit about your organization, how people can get involved? Because I know we have about a couple of minutes left.
Not a problem. So it's the National Association of Women Business Owners. And we're the only dues-based organization that represents women business owners solely. We're across the US. We also have our international arm, which is the FCM, that we represent other women business owners around the world. But we're based in Washington, DC. We have leadership development tracks. We have our annual conference where we bring women together, and our sponsors together, our corporate sponsors, UPS, Bank of America, where they're able to sit and meet with these companies and learn how to grow, learn how to get capital. And then we also have, except for this year, it's been a little different. Every year we go to the Hill and we meet with our senators and our congressmen. It started with maybe 20 or 30, and then we ended up with like 200. And we even got our own room on the Hill, and where all the senators and the congressmen would come to us personally. So, we come together as a force. The International Sisters is alone, you're invisible, together we're invincible. And I think that's probably the biggest statement that I can say that what we do for women business owners. But you can visit nabo.org, O-R-G, and you'll learn more about our organization.
Great, thank you. And Lindsey?
Yeah, and ours is ladiesamerica.org. And really, if you have an interest in mentoring or being mentored, that is our primary focus currently. And that could include also women in our international network. So you can always write us at info@ladiesamerica.org, or you can write me personally. I might be a little slower, Lindsey at ladiesamerica.org, and let us know of any interest that you have. And we're in all the social media platforms as well, so you're welcome to look at us there as well.
That's wonderful. Gisette, did you want to add anything?
Oh, I just want to thank you. Thank both of you for joining us. If you want to join it, once we're finished with the webinar, if you want to join in so that we can chat a little bit more, please raise your hand. And then are we wrapping up, Andrea, or do you want to?
I don't know if they have, it's late for them. It's 3 hours ahead, so I don't want to take up too much of their time.
No.
So it's 8 o'clock for them.
Okay.
So I know it's,
Lindsey,
and I know
you have to go get my son.
I know, and I know you have a little one, so I don't want to take up that time away.
Okay. Yeah.
So I do want Teresa, Lindsey, I can't thank you enough for being here and for opening your conversation, your heart to the conversation when I called you or when I sent an email like, please, can you talk? And I didn't even get a nah. It was just right away, very supportive. And I can't tell you how much I appreciated that. So thank you. It means the world to me. Thank you so much. And please let me know if we can ever, there's a group of women here, if we can ever help you, or even if you wanted to come in this area, you know, have a conversation, etc. We're here for you. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm willing to stay on if there's anybody that wants to join to give any feedback.
Yeah, and please don't feel obligated, Lindsey,
no.
to stay on. I know it's late, so go ahead.
Yes,
Sorry.
but I will stay on if any.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
If you want to,
Right.
thank you, ladies. If anybody
Lindsey.
wants to join in, raise your
Thank you.
hand.
Thank you for all that you guys are doing for women. Honestly, it's truly remarkable, and thank you for inviting us to be part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's our honor. Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, Teresa.
Bye.
So if you're going to join us next week, we are going to be here again for our last webinar on the 28th at 3:30, the same time. And it's going to be how to do it all. How to do it all.
What does that mean?
How to do it all. Working, wife, mother, distance learning, everything.
Great.
Okay, we don't have any hands up, so
Then I think we're going to say goodnight.
yes, we
Unless
are.
you and I want to chat, and we can chat and have a great conversation. Or I
Okay,
can go off and get some.
let me turn this recording off.